evening, everyone. I'm Kalila Reynolds, and welcome to the third webinar in our Quartz Ready Cash Business Survivor webinar series. I'm your host for this evening's session, and with us is our guest, Atasha Bernard. She is the General Manager of Quartz Ready Cash, and she's also a registered public accountant and chartered accountant. And her role is to bring some clarity to this evening's topic, which is how to keep business records, your roadmap to success. So we're going to welcome Atasha in just a moment, but we're really excited to be with you to share some exciting and interesting information. And now, let me ask Atasha to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. So, I am a chartered accountant, registered public accountant. I've been with Quartz Ready Cash now in my fifth month. Prior to joining Quartz, I am also an entrepreneur, so I would have done consultancy with small businesses as well. And prior to that, I've worked in the financial industry for almost 10 years. Prior to that, I've worked with other organizations in auditing. So I've worked from an accounting clerk to director role. I've worked across all sector. I am also Rotarian. I am also a mother, right?
Many hats.
Very right. So that's in a nutshell who is
That's
Atasha.
a big nutshell.
Yes.
A lot of things fit in that nutshell. Well,
Yes.
welcome and thank you so much for being our guest today. And clearly you bring a wealth of knowledge, so we're looking forward to hearing all about, everything that Atasha has to say. And it's, of course, great to have you. All right. So let me tell you some more. Recently, Quartz Ready Cash started offering loans to small and micro businesses. It's a carefully designed product that was created for businesses just like yours and mine and Atasha's. It offers not just a financial solution, but also well-needed support that allows small and micro businesses to build capacity and scale up. Now, the webinar series is therefore one of the ways that Quartz Ready Cash is connecting with you, the business community, to add value to your operations. And our topic for this evening is definitely one that we know you will see significant value and benefit from. Keeping proper records is one of the most challenging areas for small business operators. Very often, small businesses operate like one-man shows, and every aspect of the operations depends so heavily on you, the entrepreneur. Trust me, I know all about that, being a solopreneur where you have to become head cook and bottle washer. And then you become so bogged down with focusing on the product and the service delivery aspects of the business, while the administrative side falls by the wayside. Yes, I know you can relate. It's just a lot to do. But it's a critical business process that we cannot ignore because there's so many advantages to ensuring that we keep proper records. If we want our businesses to be successful, to grow, to meet regulatory obligations, proper record keeping is essential, and therefore very confident that you will learn a great deal from our session as we explore the topic, how to keep business records, your roadmap to success. So we're happy that you've taken the time to join us to learn more on how to improve the way you conduct business. Make sure you take the opportunity to ask as many questions as possible, and feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll answer them before that session ends. But of course, what would a Quartz Ready Cash webinar be without
Giveaway.
a what? There we go, a giveaway. Yes, that's exciting news. One lucky person will be the winner of a $50,000 Quartz shopping voucher, but you have to stick around to the end to know if you are that lucky person. And that's not all. Yes, another one of you will win a free business consultation, so stay tuned. It could be you. So, Atasha,
Yes,
it
Kalila.
is time to get into the meat of the matter.
Are we going to cook?
You're a different kind of meat. You ready?
Oh, yes.
So it can be so difficult to pay attention to all these bits and pieces of paper to keep track of everything. So I have my ideas on how I try to keep track of it in my business, but just help us understand, what do we mean by proper record keeping? Because some people see it as a complex and complicated process, but explain to us in simple language, what is proper record keeping?
Okay, thanks, Kalila. Proper record keeping. So, first of all, there's a misconception that record keeping is financial information. Record keeping is a combination of non financial information and financial information. So, when you think about financial information, financial results are the finished products of people's actions. When you think about record keeping, it is also important to look at record keeping, whether it's physical or online. When you think about record keeping as well, keep, as the name suggests. How do you store information? How do you save information? And not a situation where you will store something and then you cannot find it. So you will need to ensure that you store, keep, save the information so that you can put it in a place, whether it's physical or online, so that you can retrieve the information at a future date for quick turnaround time. So that's in a nutshell what is record keeping.
All right, so we definitely need to get into ways that we can do this. But tell me, why is it important to keep proper records?
Well, I am sure that for most of us, all of us, would have a birth certificate, right? So when you think about record keeping, it's not just financial information. It's about how do you store information based on transactions, based on activities, based on events, so that you can go back to those historic information to ensure that you make good decision. Storing information can also be used for good management. Interestingly, I had a discussion with a small business recently, and the business wanted to find investors to sell the business. And during that discussion, they were not able to sell the business because they didn't have any records.
None at all?
No, it was not adequate. And on the face of it, it may seem as if the business is doing well. But for you to attract investors, it is
Right.
important that you store information. So in that situation, the business owner had to delay selling portion of the business for a year so that they can store information and transactions on the business to attract the investor.
But how does that even happen? Because don't you need to have your records when it's tax time?
All right, so there is a misconception again. Why are you in business, Kalila?
To make money.
Exactly. How can you ensure that you make money? Is it just tax time you want to make money?
Of course not, no.
Exactly. So that is a misconception as well. People are in business to make money. And how do you need to ensure that you make money? You cannot manage what is not measured. So you need to ensure that you put things in place, whether it's weekly, daily, monthly, fortnightly, or annually. Look at it. Tax time is once per year. So you would have missed out on daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly, and other periods in between. It is also important as well that when you think about financial information, it's not just tax. And when you're collect, there's also a misconception. Profit is not cash, and cash is not profit. So how do you know whether or not you need to pay tax? You're probably not making a profit because you normally pay taxes on profit. So you need to know during the year whether or not you're making a profit, so you can also plan your tax payment and you do not wait until the end of the year to know what is it that you need to pay.
Right, absolutely. So tell me, that business that you gave the example of, is that very common that you have small businesses who just don't keep proper records? Like, what data is available to say how prevalent this is or isn't?
Well, statistics have shown that most businesses, especially small businesses, do not keep proper records, whether it's financial or non-financial information. For example, when you think about why did you go into business, it is like similar to buying a car. You didn't buy a car to buy gas, right? You bought a car to move from point A to point B. So you would want to ensure that in buying that car, you will need to ensure that you have money as well to buy gas so you can move from point A to point B. Even last week, I saw a news article that made reference to the unemployment rate. And in that article, it has mentioned that unemployment is at its lowest now since they have started to measure information. So what has happened is that prior to the government measuring the statistics of unemployment, there's nothing that they could go back to because there's no data or record keeping to measure those information.
So this is another thing now. A lot of people feel like, well, I can't do it because it's so much work and I'd have to hire an accountant. Do I have to hire an accountant to do this? Because it is a lot of work.
Well, as a chartered accountant, right? So, do you need to hire an accountant? Well, first of all, it depends. And one of the things to bear in mind as well, there are basically 3 different categories of accountants. So it depends on where your business is at. It also depends on whether or not you feel comfortable doing certain transactions. It also depends because there are some transactions like buying a house, you may need a lawyer, but you don't necessarily need an accountant for everything. And it also means too that even though you're probably familiar or comfortable with accounting, depending on the business that you're in, even if you're an accountant, you may want to hire another accountant because what you will find is that because you're strong in one area, you may find yourself getting caught up in the accounting work when you could have used the time to do sales and marketing, some things that you're not so strong in. So I will say it depends. It depends on where the business is at. You may need a regular accountant who will just do the transactions, ensure that your transactions are updated, whether it's in a system, whether it's Excel or any mobile app. Depending on your business, you may start out small, but as the business grows, you may want to consider a chartered accountant, somebody that is more seasoned and experienced. And it is always good when you, not to say that you should not look at an accountant, but it is always good when you use a chartered accountant as well, because if you use an accountant is not normally a member of the Institute of Chartered of Accountants.
Oh, so I was just about to ask you what's the difference.
So that's the difference. The accountant is not normally a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and the chartered accountant is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and then you have a registered public accountant who is a member of the Public Accountancy Board. So what the accountant can do, if there is any ethical behavior or issues with your accountant, if you're not using a chartered accountant, there's no recourse because who you're going to report to. And that's one of the main difference, because if you're using a chartered accountant and there is a problem with that chartered accountant, you can report it to the Institute of Chartered Accountants and there can be some recourse with that person. If it is that you probably need to get an audited financial statement, because a chartered accountant alone cannot do an audited financial.
Right.
You will have to be a registered public accountant to do audited financials. So you will need a registered public accountant. So it all depends on what you need. If you just need somebody to do your transactions and it's not complex, you can use an accountant. But as the business grows and you want to ensure that you have more seasoned, experienced person, you may want to move up to a chartered accountant. It doesn't mean that you need to hire somebody full-time as well, because you probably just need an accountant that you can call and say, okay, how do I treat this transaction? What do I need to do, rather than having a full-time person?
Right. What's the difference between accounting and bookkeeping, by the way?
Well, accounting and bookkeeping, bookkeeping is more transactional to ensure that the transactions are recorded, and accounting is a little bit more advanced. So bookkeeping would think about more cash transactions. So you will record all the cash transactions in and out. Accounting is getting a little bit more complex now, where you will need to ensure that you record not just the transactions for cash in or cash out, but there are probably non-cash transactions that you will need to ensure that you record, and to ensure that those transactions are also in compliance with the necessary accounting standards as well.
So bookkeeping is really what we're talking about today, the record keeping
Yes,
aspect.
right.
Just keeping track of what you spent and what comes in
Right.
as well.
Right.
All right, so I think I saw a question in the chat already. Yes, we do. So should we go to the questions now? All right, let me ask the first question. Atasha, people are listening and taking notes.
Okay.
Our first question is, if we do not make profit, are we to still do tax returns?
Yes, yes. From once you have a registered business, or whether or not the business is registered, as an individual, you are required to file your taxes. And even if you're making a loss, it is also important to file your taxes, because there are tax losses that can be carried forward to future periods that will reduce your tax for the upcoming year as well.
Yeah, and then also you still have to file the returns, because how would TAJ know that you didn't make a profit if you don't file the return, right? So you have to file the return.
Right.
So keep the questions coming in the chat. We're also going to have a special question and answer segment at the end, where you'll be able to ask as many of your questions as we have time to accommodate to Atasha. Next question, Atasha, is, and this is a great one, what software do you recommend to a small business owner in order to keep good digital records?
Well, software, there are several software online, and one of the most common used software is QuickBooks Online. A lot of companies will use it. And when you think about software, it is also important to ensure that you have technical support. With QuickBooks, you can get technical support. Anything you don't know or you need to figure out, you can also go to YouTube University
Yes.
and search. So QuickBooks, it's very cost effective as well, and a lot of small businesses use QuickBooks.
Yeah, they start
There are many others, like you have Zoho Books, which was recently waived.
what's it called?
Zoho Books.
Zoho?
Right.
Z-O-O?
Z-O-H-O.
Zoho, okay.
Right. So previously there was Wave, and then Wave
Right, I know
converted to Zoho Books. Zoho, it's a whole platform by itself. There are several applications within it as well.
I've seen invoices from Wave. That was more of a cell phone app, right? I see people send invoices via Wave.
Right. So
So that's now Zoho.
Yes, but for those persons that would have signed on to Wave, I believe up to 2020, they can still use Wave. So for my consultancy business, I use Wave and I still have Wave using as well. And but now is Zoho and QuickBooks, the cost is very minimal. It's not free, but even though there is a cost, it will be much cheaper to pay a monthly fee to enter the transactions monthly rather than to wait until the end of the year when you're filing your tax return or you want to know what profit you make. I must tell you, if you use QuickBooks monthly, it will cost you less at the end of the year when you get an accountant to assist you with your filing. It will cost less because they will not have the transactions to enter because you would have already done that.
Right,
Yes.
right. So what about a lot of people use Microsoft Excel, just a spreadsheet?
Spreadsheet is good for those persons that are comfortable with spreadsheets. Spreadsheet is good. And most importantly too, because you could be using a software, but you're not storing the supporting information. One of the good things with QuickBooks, and I've used it a lot, is that it also has the option to upload copies of the invoices or supporting details. So it's always good to ensure that you store the information, save it, whether it's online or physical, so you can retrieve it at a future date.
Yeah. Let me give you guys a little tip that I use as well. So for me, I prefer Google Drive. Once you have a Gmail account, you get automatic storage with Google Drive. You just create various folders, a folder for each month and for each year. Put all your receipts in there, all your invoices, both ways, going in and out, so that you have that register. If you have a physical receipt, that's where the phone comes in handy. Take a picture of it, add it to Google Drive, or Dropbox is a similar feature.
Or OneDrive.
OneDrive, that's another popular one that comes with Microsoft, right?
You're right.
So yeah, there's so many free ways that you can keep track of it. But we're talking about this earlier to Atasha. Some entrepreneurs see record keeping as only benefiting the tax man. So tell our listeners, what are the other benefits of keeping records?
Well, the other benefits of keeping records, and a lot of time, is that you may be on the road, you would have purchased gas, for example. As Khalila mentioned earlier, you could ensure that you take a photo and you save it. The benefits of keeping records is that when you need to go to a financial institution, like you're coming to Courts Ready Cash and you may need a loan, we will want to see some of those documentation to see what are some of those historic transactions for your business. So it will assist with getting credit from financial institution. It will also assist you as a reference point for quicker decision as well. It's good management, and when you go to a financial institution and you have your records, then the financial institution will have some confidence and trust in you because there's some documentation that they can refer to. If there is no documentation, the process would probably be a little bit more difficult. And I would also like to use this opportunity that while we understand, because a shopkeeper may think that, but I am in the shop every day. I don't want no computer or no laptop or what is this QuickBooks or, what can I do? So, like for a shopkeeper, a simple exercise book could work, because what you need to do is to ensure that for not necessarily every sale, but because it's going to be difficult if somebody comes and they buy something and you're going to write down everything, but at least at the end of the day, you would want to add or total your sales for the day. So each day you will just write in a book what is your total sales for the day. If you have used any cash to purchase anything, you will also write it down. And at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you can look to see, okay, how much money I've collected, how much money I've spent. And then you can see some records of what the business is doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me go back to the questions. I know you guys have quite a few of them coming in. All right, so our next question is, how can small business owners access credit line at Quartz Ready Cash Company?
Well, this is a great opportunity for you because we do understand and realize that there are a lot of small businesses out there that will need credit, and you cannot go to those bigger institutions. But guess what? We have a special policy for you where for small businesses, you can get up to $450,000 without actual financial statements. From once we can verify that you have an existing business and you have things going on, you can come over to us at Quartz Ready Cash and we will be very happy to assist you. Because doing business or providing credit, it's not just about writing a loan for Quartz Ready Cash. It's about how can we provide financial solutions for people to maximize opportunities. How can we create an experience for you as a business to send your child to school? How can we create an experience for you to have money so you can probably provide health care for your family? How can we provide an opportunity for you so that you can buy food to put on your table? So we do understand that there are some small businesses out there that may not have the necessary information, and we do have a package for you.
So what's the package?
So the package is that without actual recording information on the business, so we understand that they may not have financial statements, or we may understand that they do not have some records. But from once we can go to your business, we can verify that you have an existing business, you can get up to $450,000.
Oh, so you send somebody there.
Yes, to
Okay,
verify.
that
So
makes
persons
sense.
can come over if you do not have the documentation. From once we can verify that it is your business, you're in the business, we will do our verification.
Right.
But we do understand that you may not have certain documentations. Right.
The next question from our viewers is about QuickBooks, and this person wants to know, how do you store on QuickBooks? I guess store the records.
Well, QuickBooks currently has two versions. So there's the desktop version where that is installed on the computer. So you will need to provide your own data storage. But there is the online version, which is in the cloud. So that online version in the cloud is also comes with storage capacity. So you pay one fee and everything is stored in the cloud.
I never noticed that. I have to check that out. Check out
Yeah.
that feature in QuickBooks.
It does.
Another question from our viewers. If you register your business, how much should you pay for tax? Or should you pay tax apart from paying $2,500 every 3 years?
Well, that question sounds like it's a two-part
Okay.
questions. So registering your business is with the Companies Office of Jamaica, and when you do a registration for business name, it expires every 3 years.
Oh, so that's the 2,500.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that is for Companies Office of Jamaica.
That's separate from
That's
tax.
separate from taxes. So you will need to file taxes every year, and normally the deadline to file tax is March 15th annually, right?
So how much would you have to pay every year? That's what
It
the person wants.
depends. It depends. If you're not making a profit And remember, cash is not profit and profit is not cash. If you're not making a profit, then you will not have any taxes to pay.
Right.
So it all depends.
And if you make a profit, it is what percentage of your profit?
So if you're making a profit, then the tax rate could either be 25% or 33 and a third percent, depends on the business that you're in. But for most small businesses, it's 25%. If it's a sole trader, then the sole trader will also get the benefit of the income tax threshold, which is the famous 1.5, right? Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
The 33 and a third is for, I think that's like for large financial
Yeah,
institutions.
those are for
no?
larger institutions,
Yeah.
mainly regulated, right?
We have another question. I love that all the questions are coming in. Keep them coming. This question is, somebody wants to know, what are examples of non-cash transactions? You mentioned it when speaking about something that accountant might take into account.
Some non-cash transactions are, for example, and this is very critical for record keeping as well. If you're a business owner and you have staff, those staff, let's assume that they are working with you continuously, so they may need to or due vacation leave. It is also critical that you keep track of when those persons have started to work with the business, and then you look to see how many days are due to them for vacation. At the end of the period, if those vacation days have not been taken, then you will need to ensure that you make an accruals or provision for it. And that could be a non-cash transactions for the business. Other non-cash transactions could be you would have purchased, and let's say you're in a manufacturing business, you would have purchased an equipment in year one. And because that equipment is a fixed asset, it is not a part of your expense. But based on accounting policies, you will need to write off that fixed asset cost over 5 years. So in year one, it's a cash transactions to fixed asset. But in year two, you will need to account for year two depreciation, which is a non-cash transactions. On the tax side, there is capital allowance for that same fixed asset, which could also be as a benefit to reduce your tax liability.
Wow, so many more questions coming in, Atasha. Clearly, a lot of people have a lot of interest in this topic. So we've established the importance and the benefits of good record keeping, and we've determined that it can be a fairly simple process as well. Anybody can do it. So can you share with us some of the day-by-day strategies, and you've started already, that small and micro business operators can do to ensure that we keep good records?
Well, one of the things I will always say is that it's always good to follow the money, right? So if you keep track of all your money coming in, all your money going out, then what leaves to be done is the non-cash transactions. So ensuring that you keep a track of your transactions, and both financial transactions and non-financial transactions. You may be in the marketing business, and each year you have a promotion or an activity. You will need to ensure that you have like a checklist of all the things that you need to do to execute an event. That is also record keeping, because the next year when you're doing that event, you can just quickly take up that checklist and say, okay, do we have this camera? That's your business, Kalilia. Do we have this? Do we need this person? So what is important is to ensure that you make a note, whether it's online in the physical space, and you keep track of both financial and non-financial information.
Super, super important. Thank you so much, Atasha. So what about, especially for sole traders now, How important is it to separate your personal bank account and have a different account for the business? A lot of people just use the one account and use it for everything.
Well, great question, Kalila. So, oftentimes, people think that when you make a sale, it is profit, so they just use it and they do whatever they want to do. It is always important to keep separate bank accounts. And you may have a sole trader business, but when you have a sole trader business, the business is also in your name because it could be Kalila Reynolds trading as KRM, right? But at the same time, you have one account. You may have two accounts, existing accounts. You may not need to create a separate account, but you could say, all right, I'm going to use account 1 for all of my business transactions, and I'm going to use account 2 for my personal transactions. So for any business transactions, you will put it in account 1, and when you need to go and pay your personal light bill and water bill for your personal use, you will transfer from account 1, which you use solely for business, to account 2. If it is that you may have a company, then you'll definitely want to ensure that you open a separate bank account in the company's name so you can track the transactions separately.
I see a note here in my notes. It says note mileage or gas bill for business versus personal traveling. Why should we do that?
Right. So that's a good question. What you will find is that though you're in business, you also have personal expenses. So you might have purchased gas, and that gas was used for personal use. So it is also important to note that based on your traveling, what portion of your traveling is business versus business versus personal traveling. So each time you purchase gas, you may want to note, or if you have to go on business trips, you may want to note what was the purpose of the business trip, whether it's local or overseas as well. Because personal expenses are not allowed for taxation purposes. For example, if it is that you would have had sales of, let's say, $1 million for the year, but during the year you would have purchased gas for $100,000, but what portion of that gas was used for business purpose only versus personal traveling? So you will also need, you could estimate it from what it's a reasonable estimate, and you can prove to the tax office that the traveling was for both personal and business.
How do you prove that?
Well, it's reasonable because if you are in sales and marketing, then you're required to be probably on the road a lot of time. So depending on your traveling, you may say, okay, most of my traveling is 80% of my traveling is business, or 20% is personal. If you are in a business where you're mostly in office, then it's going to be difficult to justify to the tax office that 80% of my traveling is business versus a salesperson that is on the road. So it depends.
Right.
Right.
But like me traveling to come here, that's business.
That's business, right?
so I can claim for that.
Most definitely.
Oh,
Right.
okay, that's a good one. All right, we have some more questions from the chat. Somebody wants to know, does your business have to be registered to get access to loans?
It's both. So we have products for both because we understand that some persons are in business not registered for a period of time. So yes, they will need to register, but if they are not registered, just still call us, we will assess, and then we will make a decision. So it depends. So we will not say no, it depends.
Okay, and if
Right.
you're a sole trader, then
Right.
There's
So it
also
depends.
provisions for that.
Right.
The next question, how long are you allowed to run a business before registering? I don't know if that's a question for you, but maybe you know the answer.
Well, it is always a benefit to the individual to register the business as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't
as
want a
soon as
taxman come
possible.
find you and say, what?
Right.
And they do check. They do go
Yes,
around and check from time to time.
exactly.
All right. Next question online. As an LLC, does the director file tax separate from that of the business? And if yes, does the 1.5 still apply? It's a good question.
So that's a good question. And LLC is for company. So what that means is that you may have a director that is a director in a company. The company will need to file the company tax separate from the director, who is the individual.
Right.
Because legally, for a sole trader, the individual and the business is the same person. But for a company, the individual and the company is separate persons. So the company will need to file separate taxes and the director will need to file separate taxes as
Right.
well.
And the 1.5 does apply for the director, not for the company, right?
Right, but there's also a minimum,
Business
yeah.
tax.
There's a, I know last year there was a 375 for companies, and I probably need to check.
Threshold.
Yeah.
I can't remember the details on that either. But yes, for the director, so I recently had to file my taxes too, and my company is a LLC, limited liability company, like Atasha said. It's two different things. You and the company are separate, so you have to file for the company, and then you as the director, which in my case was me, I had to file my individual taxes as a director. But yes, the 1.5 still applies. So you still subtract the 1.5 from the total earnings, and in that manner you pay less taxes than you would have if that threshold wasn't there.
Right, because even though you're a director in your company, it could mean that you have other income as well that you will need to file when you're filing your own taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're filing the director, it's PAYE basically, right?
Yes, right. And
Okay.
other statutory.
Because now basically you're an employee of the company.
Right. So you will also need to file your NIS, your NHT, and your education taxes for the individual.
Right.
Right.
Right. All right. Next question. What does Quartz Ready Cash have to offer a startup or restarts?
So for Quartz Ready Cash, for Quartz Ready Cash, we have loans for businesses, but it depends on how long or the type of business. So it's difficult to say that we will not do startup, or we have products for businesses that have registered for more than 3 years. But for startup, it depends, because it could mean that you're not qualified for a business loan, but as a self-employed, you could be qualified for a personal loan. So it depends.
Oh, so you
Yes.
could do a personal instead. So Quartz Ready Cash offers both business and personal
And
loans?
personal, right. So if your business is not registered based on the required 3 years, then you could be qualified for a personal loan. So it depends. So that is why it's important to reach out to us, and then we will make an assessment if we should consider a business loan versus a personal loans, because it could be a self-employed loan.
So that ties into another question that I see coming in. This person wants to know, what about people that have bad credit history with Quartz? Will those people who have a small business be eligible for a business loan?
Well, I will say it depends, right? It depends. So reach out to us and we will assess your situation, and then we will do an assessment. So it depends.
Does that depend a lot on whether the business is separate from the person? So if the business is applying for the loan, even though you as the director or owner of the business have a personal bad credit history and you're applying as the business could still get the loan?
Well, currently the loans, though the loans are currently being done to the individual for the purpose of the business and not necessarily to
the
the
business.
company in this case. Right. So it depends.
What would they have to prove? What would they have
It
to show?
depends on the situation of that bad credit as well. So we will have to assess the situation as to what would have caused the bad credit, and then we will make an assessment and then advise the customer. So it depends. So it's not, I will not be able to say yes or no, not knowing the information directly on the customer.
Right.
Right.
Right. Okay. I see another note in my note sheet here that says, ensure that assets are not treated as expenses and vice versa. What does that mean? Explain.
Okay, so in the world of accounting, there is assets, there is liabilities, there is expenses, there is income, and there is equities. So when you think about financial transactions, for normal operating transactions, like the example that we have used before in terms of traveling, gas, those will be expense. But if you purchase an equipment to help with the production of the business, especially that equipment can be used for more than a year or over a period of time, that would be considered as an asset and not an expense.
But you spent money on it.
Right.
So why isn't it an expense if you had to spend money on it?
Because especially if it is something, so for example, for your media business,
Right.
if you would have purchased a camera,
Right.
it's not an expense because you're expecting to use that camera to generate income for the business over a period of time. So from once it's not a transaction that is expected to be short-term lived and it is expected to generate future income, then it could be classified as an asset versus an expense. So those are some of the complications that you may need an accountant or a chartered accountant
All right.
to assist
So I
with.
actually did just buy a camera. So
Yeah.
clarify this, asking for myself and on behalf of the public. So
Right.
once you purchase the asset, right, you say it's not an expense. Does that mean that when you are filing taxes, that comes out of, because there's going to be a difference, the difference between your revenue and your expenses is your profit, right?
Right.
So if that is not counted as an expense, then that means it looks like you made a higher profit, but you actually did spend this money to acquire the asset.
So in your situation, the camera could be an asset, but if there is another business that doesn't require a camera to generate income, then it could be a personal expense. So in a situation like that, the cost for the camera would go to asset, and then you will have non-financial transactions or non-cash transactions over the period of the time that you expect. So generally, most equipment is like written off over 5 years. So you will have annual depreciation on that equipment, and for tax purposes, you will have capital allowances.
Oh.
Those capital allowances will reduce your tax liability.
where it comes in.
So that's where you will see the benefit of investing in assets.
So that's why you need an accountant.
Right.
That's one of the benefits of having an accountant. So let's go back to our questions. Okay, I don't see any more questions. I thought we did have some more, but so let me go back to my notes then while we await further questions from you, the public, because this is a very important topic. Record keeping is something that is vital to your businesses, not only survival, but sustainability, to making sure that you can have a long-lasting business that grows. Because like Atasha said, what doesn't get what doesn't get measured,
What doesn't get measured? You cannot manage what is not measured.
cannot manage what is not measured. You have to know on paper what your business statistics are, and you'd be surprised how many business owners you go to and you ask them how much money you made last year, and they don't know.
Right.
Simple question. How much money did you make last year? Do you know the answer for your business? How much money did you make last year? How much money did you spend last year? These are vital things for you to know when it comes to, and keeping proper records can help you to figure that out. So let me go back to my notes now. Here's another one. Track loan payments for business and separate principal versus interest payments. So this would be beneficial for somebody who has a loan from Quartz Ready Cash. What does that mean?
All right. So what that means is that you would have taken a loan for business purpose. It could mean that when you took that loan, you would have used that loan to do some purchases or purchase stock inventory for the business. You will need to ensure that you record that liability because that money is now due to someone else. When you're making the loan payment, it is important that you separate the principal portion from the interest portion because the principal portion is not considered as an expense, but only the interest portion will be considered as an expense.
Why is that? Because you also have to repay the principal.
You also have to repay the principal because, for example, when you took the loan, and let's talk a little accounting. When you took the loan, you would have purchased inventory, and that inventory is now recorded in your financial as inventory or purchases. So that is already recorded in your cost of sales, which is already included in your profit or loss statement. When you're making the loan payment, if you record the principal, again, it would be double counting if you record the principal as an expense. So it is just the interest portion that you should record. But when you would have recorded that purchase transaction, you would have created a liability in your financial statement. So when you make the principal payment, you will reduce the liability for the principal portion, and then you expense the interest portion.
Ah, understood. So here is a related question from a viewer. I bought a store or building. I'm paying a mortgage loan. How do I record the monthly payments?
So it depends on what that building was purchased for.
A store, he said.
A store. So in that situation where the property would have purchased with a loan, then the individual will need to record the liability of that mortgage. So let's say the loan amount was $10 million, then they would have to capitalize the building as an asset, record the liability of $10 million, and each month when they're paying on the mortgage, they will reduce the $10 million by the principal portion only, and the interest will go to expense.
Okay,
Right.
okay. So I hope that answers your question. I was able to follow it. I hope you were able to follow and get an answer to your question. All right, the next point that I see here is protect information with online security and physical security. This is very important now in these days of the whole cyber security and cyber attacks.
Well, you know, when you're in the physical space, similar to when you're in the physical space, you will need to go through the security. You will need to get the key to go into the cabinet. The online environment is similar. So it is also important that there are security measures for when you store information online. There is password. You may need multiple verification online, and ensure that you have those passwords so that you can remember. So storing online and storing physically is similar because you will need to ensure that you have lock and key online, similar to when you're in a physical space when you have lock and key. But sometimes what happens is that people believe that because they're online, it should just readily available. But it is important that you have online security as well, similar to how you have security guards at the gate, you have lock and key for the cabinet. You need to have your lock and key in your online space as well.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Copy, and this goes back to some of the things that we were talking about earlier in regards to record keeping specifically. This point here says, copy thermal receipt to ensure durability. What's a thermal receipt?
So those thermal receipts are like when you use your debit card or credit card, those receipt papers, sometimes it's faded very easily. So after a couple of days, you cannot see the information and other receipts. So to ensure that you can have those information for future date, it's good if you copy the receipt or if you take a photo
Right.
of the receipt as well and store it.
On our last question from our viewers, this person wants to know if the business is operating from home, will it still have access to Quartz Ready Cash?
It depends on the business because it could be probably a dressmaker operating from home, and we can verify that they are in business. We can verify that they have transactions. So it depends.
Yeah, a lot of
Right.
small businesses and micro businesses start out from home. There is nothing wrong with that.
Right, and it's important. I've said depends several times, and it's deliberate because it's not one size fits all, because we do understand that some customers are unique, so we cannot use the same approach for all customers. So we would need to ensure that we assess the customer individually before we make a decision, and that is why it depends on the information that the customer may have.
Yep.
Right.
Well, this has been so helpful. This has been very exciting, Atasha, very interactive. We thank you so much for your presence and for all the information. You're just a wealth of information. It was a very informative session. I know I learned a whole lot, and I appreciate how you have simplified a topic that many people tend to stay away from because it always just sounds so complex, time-consuming, and mundane. I trust about the time-consuming part. And I also want to thank our participants, our viewers, for punching some tough and interesting topics to you, and certainly for sticking around to the very end. Thanks especially to Quartz Ready Cash for providing us with this excellent forum where we get a chance to educate and inform the bedrocks of our economy. Those are our entrepreneurs with vital and useful information. Now, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? Dun, 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 we are not yet quite finished. This is the moment that you have been waiting for. Do you want to hear if you are a lucky winner of our exciting prizes, courtesy Quartz Ready Cash? You ready? I'm keeping you on the edge of your seat. All right, so let me say congratulations to, who is it? Who is it? Congratulations to, is it this one that you sent me? Okay, good. Congratulations to Ida Gonzalez. You're the person who stayed on the longest, and you have won the $50,000 Quartz voucher. Congratulations, Ida Gonzalez. Applause, applause, applause. All the sound effects. You have been rewarded for sticking around to the end of our session, and a member of our team will contact you, so stay with us, and congratulations once again. So yeah, and that's one of my favorite parts of this event. I love doing the giveaways. Let me see who is our next winner. Do we have our next winner? All right, check my phone. Yes, winner's name is here. Our next winner wins a free business consultation. Very, very important prize, a free business consultation, again, courtesy of Quartz Ready Cash. So who will that lucky winner be? Is it you? Well, congratulations to Marsha Gregory. Yay! Applause, applause. Congratulations, Marsha Gregory. You were selected because you were one of the first persons to actually register for this webinar. So congratulations. And once again, a member of the team will contact you, so please stay online. Now remember, if you're a small or micro business, you're an entrepreneur seeking support, please reach out to us on our website, readyfinancecaribbean.com, or send a direct message on 876-562-1635 or 876-492-3192. So let me repeat those numbers for you. That's 876-562-1635 or 876-492-3192. And a member of our team will reach out to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been our pleasure to be with you this evening. Continue to stay safe and keep watching this space to see what our next exciting topic will be. I'm Kalila Reynolds. It was my pleasure hosting you this evening. Thanks again to Atasha
Thank
Bernard
you.
from Courts Ready Cash. Enjoy your evening, and we'll see you again next month.
Thank you.